Gear Tasting Radio is brought to you by Imminent Threat Solutions. ITS provides knowledge that empowers individuals with indispensable skill sets to explore the world and prevail against all threats. Right now, as a special thank you for all podcast listeners, we're offering 10% off in the ITS store. Simply use the code GTR to save 10% at store.itstactical.com. All right, welcome to Gear Tasting Radio, where we offer an in-depth look into the usage and philosophy behind the equipment in our lives. I am joined, as always, by Rob Henderson.
Hello.
And I'm Brian Black. And today, we're doing questions. Finally.
We promised,
yes.
And we followed up.
We promised. We put some questions together that we've received by people that use the pound tag Gear Tasting on any social media network, and we will answer them here on the show, which we're doing right now. So, without further ado, let's get into the first question that comes from James over email. I messed around with some lock sport and realized the locks on my front door are a joke. What are some locks that you would recommend for just a standard front and rear door? Any additional secondary door segment would be great. Also, securement, so I guess let's talk about the types of doors first that you could run into, just because there are different recommendations based on what type of door you have. And first, really, before I would even suggest what kind of lock to put on your door, I would ask you what kind of door you have. And that's not to say that you can't put a specific type of lock on a door. It's more to talk about the security of the door first before you talk about the lock.
Yeah, we're not door shaming you.
Yeah, definitely not. That's not what this podcast is about. We're not shaming anybody with the question. So one thing to remember is that the door itself is a weak point. So it's not just the lock on the door. It's really the door and the frame. So, if you think about it, once a deadbolt's thrown and your door's closed, just take the front door, for example, your weakest point is where that deadbolt contacts the door frame. So most people have a wooden door frame as well as a wooden door, and we can get into the types of doors in a second. But when somebody kicks in your door, all that's between you and the outside is a piece of wood that's probably I'd say no more than a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch thick, depending on your door frame. So that really is all that lock has to break through to open your door. So before you start getting into what kind of lock to replace, personally, I would recommend that you focus first on some kind of door security through the jamb. So whether that's through like a Door Devil or Door Armor, those are two companies that both make those types of devices. So you're basically you're able to distribute the kick. Essentially,
it's like a snowshoe.
Exactly,
it distributes the force equally on the frame.
That's a great analogy. I never
I
thought
had
about
to tell somebody about it the other day.
That's good.
Yeah,
I
it
like
helps
that.
displace it so that when you get a kick, because statistically, like you're talking about lock sport and stuff, but someone that's breaking into your house isn't going to take the time to pick the lock if you have a regular deadbolt. They're just going to kick it.
Yep.
And that, like you said,
more than likely.
Yeah, that tiny little deadbolt is going to give. And we did that video on the Door Armor, and I was just showing somebody this the other day. I mean, you gave that solid kicks, and it's not moving.
I screwed up my foot.
Yeah.
I really did. I think I limped for 3 days, and then my foot was swollen for probably a good 6 days after that or so. I was down and out after that.
Firsthand
that door
experience.
kick. I mean, I was trying to donkey kick that thing. It was amazing. So we'll link to that in the episode intel too, just so you can kind of see what that does. Like, we legit have a video of a home door, because we did a video a long time ago. This was probably 5 or 6 years now, with Door Devil, and we had kind of a mock frame built, and we had a former linebacker football player come in and try to kick it too, and it held up, but a lot of people said that door is the mock door is giving too much. It wouldn't be like that on a regular house. So it was very interesting when we got the opportunity to go to an abandoned house with Door Armor and actually install one of these things and see how it worked firsthand. And this is not a plug for them. We're not getting any money off Door Armor from telling you about it. So just FYI, these are products that we recommend. So
and it feeds into the second half of his question,
right?
Which is secondary securement.
Yes,
like that's
I mean, I would call that primary securement before I would talk about the lock. So I would reverse those, and that's what he alludes to in his question. Primary would be the door jamb itself. Secondary would be the lock, and then tertiary would be the actual door itself. While you may think, well, why not the door first if someone could just kick through the door? Even a hollow wood door will still hold up pretty well against a kick. And I'm not saying you can't just baseball bat it and get through it.
Yeah.
But that's a consideration too. You really want to look at the door itself. So if it's a hollow core wood door, I would upgrade to a solid core wood door. And then if not a solid core wood door, I go to a metal door. So, and then most office spaces like the one we're in right now at ITS headquarters, we have metal door frames. So those are that's kind of some added security in itself when you have a metal door frame and a metal door. It's still susceptible to, bending. I mean, metal can still bend with enough force, but you just don't have that same, you don't have that same insecurity, if you will, with a metal frame and a metal door.
Yeah.
However, that's when you really get into the type of lock too. So when you're actually discussing locks, I would recommend Abloy Protec. I think it's the Abloy Protec 2. There's a place called Security Snobs that sells them. You can configure them pretty much any way you want to. What's good about those is the keys are secure as well, so no one can just go down to the hardware store and copy a key. You really have to, you not only have to have the account information of the key holder, but you have to be licensed on that account to actually duplicate the key. It's like
and
that.
Only certain places can duplicate
Yep,
it.
and it's like that for multi-lock too. So that's another lock that you can look into. So it's MUL, then the letter T, and then lock, multi-lock. And so I would recommend Abloy Protec 2s or multi-locks. There are defeats out there for the multi-lock, but it's very, you have to have a specialized tool. It's pretty complicated. It's more than most people are willing to do.
Yeah.
So you're really not going to run into that with that. It's basically just to protect you from the everyday person that comes by with some lock picks.
Yeah.
Because multi-lock cannot be defeated with standard lock picks. And you have to have a device to actually bypass or defeat that.
Yeah.
Same with, I don't even think there's any hacks out there for the Protec 2s. I haven't seen anything yet on people being able to defeat those, but I could be wrong.
I'm sure it's extremely complicated.
Right. So, and then what I'd recommend too is, not only focusing on the deadbolt itself, but you really want a double cylinder on the door, and that's the most secure you can get. So, meaning that even if someone were to get inside your house, they would not be able to get back out the front door because you have a keyway on the backside too to lock the door. That can be dangerous in emergencies if you have to get out the door really quick. So, keeping the key somewhere close to the door, is important. But, honestly, there's even risk in that because in an emergency, you're fumbling with the key, trying to get out the door. There is a danger. So just FYI on that. So that's kind of what I would talk about, in terms of doors. Now, when you get into things like sliding glass doors, since we're talking about back doors too, that's why I would recommend Door Armor, because they have multiple types of security measures for different types of doors. So another thing that's really dangerous too is having a double door front door. So meaning you have a little, I don't know what you call that.
Like a pin almost.
Like a pin that goes into the ground and in the top, so it holds that second door shut. And that's pretty insecure.
Yeah.
A well-placed kick on a double door.
Those are your weak points.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they have a way of bracing that and securing it as well. So they have a lot of solutions for not only sliding glass doors, but double front doors. If you have a jam against a window in the front, so a lot of people will have a front door, but then there'll be a little piece of glass next to the front door. They even have a solution for that too. So
another great reason to have a double cylinder.
Exactly. I was going to get to that too, which is, because that's easy to do. You just break that little pane of glass and then reach your hand in and then unlock the door. Well, hey, if you have a double cylinder lock, they're not going to be able to just unlock the door. So they still might be able to wiggle through that window if they're small enough, but they're probably not going to open the door.
Yeah.
Because, that's the thing you have to think about too, is that it prevents them from getting out the front door. So let's say they manage to break a window and squeeze through into your house. Well, they're sure as hell not going to get the TV out that way.
Yeah, they can only get stuff that can fit through that window.
Right. So it's buying time, just like any security, like we always say. So thanks for the question, James. That was a good one. The next one comes from Benjamin over email. I've been following your site for several years now and really appreciate and enjoy your content. Thank you very much. I realize that I need to use a monthly planner, but I've had trouble finding something with a good layout that's made for men. I don't know, Men's Warehouse. I don't know if you all use planners much or have any recommendations, but I'd love to hear if you know of any. So
I was so excited to see this question come through.
You want to field that one?
Yeah.
Because you still carry a planner.
Well, I've switched. I used to do a paper planner. First of all, he's talking about a monthly planner. There is a monthly planner. It's called a calendar. I don't do monthly planning on paper, and I never have. But this is called the Emergent Task Planner, one of the ones that I use. It was really great for daily planning. So basically, you highlight 3 major tasks that you want to accomplish, and then it gives you flex space for additional tasks beyond that. But it also gives you a time tracker to the left that you can either use proactively or retroactively to track what you did. I switched whenever you introduced me to getting things done into using OmniFocus for Mac. There's other things that you can do. So I do primarily planning on the computer now, but one of the things that he mentioned is needing a monthly planner, and I find that it gets a little messy to try to like map your whole month out, unless there are date-specific things, which that's what a calendar is great for. So I would use any standard calendar app, or even like, the Sierra Club calendar. And I definitely understand the made-for-men thing, but I just feel like today, with electronics being what they are, it would be so much easier to just track things electronically. But I guess if you had to do paper, I would just do calendar for the month and then do like a daily planner. I mean, you could use this as a monthly view, just using each page as a day, which would be a little easier.
There was a 90s movie that came out in the 90s, and
I'm shocked.
It was about a guy, I think it was John Belushi or something. I can't remember, one of the Belushis. But I think that was who the main character was. He had a planner that was, huge. It was probably like 3 inches thick, and he had all his credit cards in there, his phone numbers, everything, and he said this in the movie, my life is in there, and he left it at the airport.
Yep.
So somebody picked it up, and maybe it was the Belushi that actually assumed the identity, but he basically got his identity stolen, and he had access to everything, everybody's phone numbers, birthdays, so I always think of that when I think of planners. It's kind of a funny thing, because there is some security to think about when it comes to planners too, and what you put in there, because that is written, and if you lose it, it's kind of a big deal.
Absolutely.
But I mean, we're not carrying around credit cards in a planner nowadays anyway, and I forget the name of that big planner company that used to be around. I don't know if they are still around or not, but I can't even remember them. I had one when I went in the Navy. I had a little planner that had everybody's phone number in it and stuff, because that was
like notes.
That was really that was before the iPhone, so I kind of had to have a record of that. Especially being in the Navy, I had to have paper something.
Yeah,
I couldn't
couldn't
carry anything electronic or anything.
Yeah,
right, exactly. My Palm Pilot was at home.
Yeah,
the Franklin Planner, that was the name of the company.
Okay.
Yeah, they were a huge planner company.
I want to say it rings a bell. I've seen the logo as like a script in my head.
Yeah, you might be onto something. But they used to make, refill packs, and you get. It was a big industry, man. It was a big industry, and then smartphones
computers
upset all that. Yeah, computers too. Just to kind of detail what I do in terms of that, it's funny that this has kind of the major tasks, because that's kind of what I do with a bullet journal-like thing. And I do that, and it's a modified one. I don't follow that, to the T. But what I do the night before, the new day starts, is that I list kind of the 3 MITs, or most important things that I want to accomplish the next day. And I make sure I at least do that every night. I mean, there's also journaling. I try to do that in the evenings, but some days I kind of fall off the wagon. But I'm being honest.
Dear journal, everything was good today.
Yeah, I don't have time for you.
Right.
But that's what I try to do in the evening. So I walk into the next day, knowing what is the most important to me that day. Sometimes that gets completely disrupted, and I never even get to those things because my day gets all thrown out of whack. But for the most part, I do try to focus on those and getting those done during the day. So I use a combination of my little reporter style notebook, and I write that down. Those are I use a star, I draw a little star, and those are like the most important things for the day. So like the first 3 things on there is that I star 3 items, I put the date on there, so I'll fill in the next day's date so I know what it is, and then I will rank those things using like a 1 through 5 scale. So like to the left margin is the number 1. Or I'm sorry, let's start with star. So, you have first star on the left margin, then the item itself, and then to the far right margin is a little circled number, 1 through 5. So that is my
That's
my
order?
priority.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And of course, the most important things are probably all going to be 5s, and that's typically what I have them
okay,
at.
from a scale of importance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Gotcha. I didn't know if it was sequential
Yeah,
or.
it's
Okay.
definitely importance.
Gotcha.
And then I start numbering, like if I know there's more than 3 things that I need to do that are super important, I'll start just jotting down what comes to mind that I need to get done the next day. And those things will be now sequential. So there'll be starting with a number 1. And then I'll still do the right column margin number that's circled so I get a priority with it. And it's kind of helped me to organize just what I need to get done during the day. And that's enough for me. I don't find that I need anything really more than a little notebook because I start a notebook on one side, because if you can think of a reporter style notebook, it's got a front and a back. You flip it over, it's kind of the same thing. So I flip it over and I use that for my notes. So if there's notes that I need to jot down during the day, they go in a separate page in the back side of the notebook. So it becomes the front of the notes section if I flip it over. And then basically when those 2 things meet, my notes and my daily to-dos, I'm done with that notebook and I move on to the new one.
I understand. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's what I kind of do every day. And then that's kind of, followed by the priority stuff that I have in OmniFocus and my, my next actions for the projects that I need to complete. And then I also use the calendar for things that have to be due on a specific date. And I usually always set reminders on those so they pop up on my computer when I'm working during the day. And then I'll also use a tickler file for paper-based material, which, that word's so funny.
Just the hand motion you made.
Yeah. I know that's kind of getting off on a tangent. It's not really a planner, but...
Well, I think the answer is that there's no one good answer.
Yeah, there's
it's
not.
Tough to track it's
really got to be a personal decision, too. Yeah. So we'll link in that GTD stuff that we've talked about before. And I think I've mentioned the notebook in an article at some point.
Yeah, we'll find it.
Yeah, we'll throw all that in, too. So hopefully that helps with your question there, Benjamin, and thank you for that. Next question comes from John. Can you go over some concealable Tradecraft tools and what they're used for? Absolutely. Well, I have my...
Please hurry, I'm stuck.
I have my elevator action shirt on, too, today, so that it's right along...
Timely.
Right along with that theme.
Yeah.
So I think primarily when you're talking about kind of Tradecraft tools, I mean, what comes to mind for me is lock picks, kind of escape and evasion stuff, things that you can conceal to...
Microfilm.
Yeah. You gotta have your Get Smart shoe phone. You have to have your code watch, so you have little code dials in your watch. There's got to be a hollow nickel in your pocket so that you can smuggle out your microfilm.
Which is hilarious because we do have a hollow $50 coin that we sell.
I think it's cool nostalgia. Anyway, I'm into all that Cold War spy stuff. So
who isn't? That stuff's so cool.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I can't get enough of movies and books and stuff like that with it. But, I would say, on a more realistic standpoint of what people will encounter during the day, I love to keep a set of lockpicks in my wallet taped to the back of a card. And I've talked about this before, but I can't tell you how many times I have used those. And I just use plain, what do you call it? Not masking tape, Scotch tape. So I use Scotch tape to put them on the back of the card because usually I'm around somewhere where I can get more Scotch tape or reuse it. And
Makes sense.
It's super simple. And I used to use, what do you call it? Not gaffer's tape, but the
like
Gorilla tape. Yeah, I used to use that, and that's a pain in the butt to get off the back of a card. And plus, you get sticky crap all over your lock picks, and I just stopped using that. I went to Scotch tape, and I've never looked back.
The residue from Scotch tape comes off really easily.
Yeah. So I carry the TI flats we have. It's a 2-piece Bogota flat tool set that we have in the ITS store, and that's really my go-to tool set for getting into any kind of lock that could be picked. And plus, what I like about that is the single pin pick, if you will. Like kind of the feeler pick is angled in a way that you can use it to pick a handcuff if you needed to.
Yeah.
I prefer to have a handcuff key squirreled away, and we sell our polymer handcuff keys for that. So if you are illegally detained, and I'm not talking about escaping from law enforcement, I always have to put out that caveat.
Yeah.
This isn't illegal methods we're talking about here. This is completely legal. If you're picking a lock, you need to have permission to pick it. It's the whole lock sport, code of ethics. And again, local laws always apply too. So In some states, just carrying lockpicks is intent. You don't have to actually be committing a crime to be charged with burglary tools. That's what most states are. You can carry them, but if you're involved in some type of crime, now they're actually burglary tools.
There's
you can be charged
the difference
for them.
between a traffic stop and then hiding behind an air conditioner at 1:30 in the morning and with a crowbar. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say that's probably my go-to. I also I know this is completely not a Tradecraft thing, but I keep cash in my wallet, and most people don't carry cash anymore. I always keep a folded up $20 bill at least.
I think it's pretty Tradecraft, though.
Yeah, sometimes I'll keep I try to keep a $100 bill in there, but sometimes I'll spend it, because I need emergency cash, and then I'm left with like $80. I'm like, well, I'm not going to stuff all that in my wallet because I need it to be thin. So I'll just wind up putting a 20 back in there. So I at least always have a 20 sitting in my wallet or something just in case, because I really do not carry cash anywhere anymore.
It helps tremendously. I've had several instances where the bank is doing maintenance or something on the account, and they're like, I'm sorry, your card's declined. Like, well, what do I do? And if the purchase is under $20, oh, here, I got my $20 bill.
Yeah, it's not maintenance. You just don't have anything in your account.
let me just hope this goes through.
The bank's always doing maintenance.
Yeah, maintenance. But cash is something it's kind of universal.
Yeah.
Depending on your situation, what you're doing, you could get a ride somewhere, or in an emergency. You're talking escape and evasion. If you had that stuff on you,
well, what's amazing to me is this kind of harkens me back to harkens. I don't know. Anyway, it takes me back to like 4th grade, and I had a buddy. We had been talking about starting our own detective agency, and we were thinking, here's what we need to carry on us. And this is funny.
Back in my law enforcement
No,
days.
seriously, this is hilarious. It goes right into what we're talking about, man. Because we talked about the same thing. Like we need to have stuff on us to be able to, get to where we need to go.
Yeah.
And this was, 4th grade, dude. That was like, early, either late 80s, probably late 80s. Anyway, we found these coupons that were like, for free stuff. So like free hamburger, free fries, free soda at the local store, and we would keep those on us because if we needed to bug out, that wasn't even a term back then, but if we needed to go somewhere and do things, we would have food at our disposal because we had these free coupons. But then we would also talk about having the ability to get somewhere, so we needed to be able to take a cab somewhere. So like we would plan routes, and we would get maps, and we would go, okay, well, if we needed to get up there, we could probably do this. And then there was a point where we had an extra bike, because I think my friend had a bike for
like a stash bike.
We did. We had we cached a bike, man. We cached it down by the creek, and it got stolen.
Yeah, of course
it did.
Because somebody was like, "Look, a stash bike."
Hey, we need to go check on that bike. Like 2 weeks later, like, man, our stash bike is gone. Somebody lifted our bike.
Oh no.
But yeah, we used to think about stuff like that, though. So, it goes right along with what we're talking about, because that's really the situation. Like, hey, you need to escape or evade. So, meaning you need to get out of town if there's emergency. You need to get to a specific place, and all you have is what you have on you. You need to get into something, and all you have is what you have on you. That's the underlying theme is, it's got to be on you to be useful. So,
sure.
And, you're talking about like home invasion scenarios. Somebody zip ties you. You got to be able to get out of that. Somebody handcuffs you. You got to be able to get out of that in a home invasion scenario. So these are realistic scenarios because these things do happen.
Sure.
And it's not just a spy game. Like, it really is real life. Stuff like this happens all the time. And most people would say, oh, I just carry a gun and that'll get me out of any situation that I'm in. And no, it's not.
You're not going to shoot the handcuffs off.
Yeah, it's like the whole analogy with, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yep.
So it's not like that. Yes, does a concealed carry permit and a handgun have its place? Absolutely.
Sure.
But I think we were talking about this topic just briefly, and we talked about like de-escalation and things like that too. So, and that kind of ties into another question we have. So I won't really harp on that too much, but. That's, when you're talking about handcuffs, I talked about that pick doubling as that. I talked about, our polymer handcuff keys that, can't be detected by a metal detector, which, if that's a concern for you, we've also got, titanium, lock picks. So that Bogota pie, or not pie, that's another set we sell. The two-piece flats are titanium, so they wouldn't be picked up in a metal detector because you can't. There's no magnetic signature on titanium.
Be ferrous.
Yeah, exactly. So picks, some Kevlar cordage to bicycle your feet and be able to saw through. Some zip ties that are plastic are important too. Just as we were talking earlier about a door frame and that deadbolt being the only thing between you and the outside, a zip tie is much like that too. So if you watch some of our videos and stuff, which we'll link to, on escaping from legal restraint, and we talk about breaking zip ties and how you can do that, and not just with Kevlar cord, but actually physically breaking them as well. But if you look at a zip tie, that little plastic piece that's ratcheting back and forth as you thread the zip tie through that hole, that's the only thing that's standing between you and your freedom. It's just that little piece of plastic that's locking that zip tie together. And,
Yep.
People have this mentality that, oh, I'm bound. I can't get out. I've got to, it's not true. And that's, mindset really comes into all this too, which I think is probably the most important tradecraft tool out there is your mindset and
Yep.
your intelligence level.
Absolutely.
And what that trumps tools any day.
Yeah.
But Kevlar cord, picks, potentially the ability to navigate is important. So
Little button compass.
A little button compass you could squirrel away is important too. And that's the kind of thing that could fit in a little change pocket of your jeans every day, or you could wear one on your watch every day, and you'd at least have some type of navigation at your disposal, and your navigation at your kitchen disposal.
Yeah.
But just certain elements like that. Those are coincidentally a lot of things that are in our spy kit on the site too, which we'll throw in a link just for good measure, not a self-promotion thing at all. You don't
Maybe
a
little
You don't
bit.
have to shop at the iTest store, but we'd love it if you did.
We would certainly appreciate it.
But they're even on Amazon too, so you can pick them up Prime if you want a little spy kit we sell, and that's SPIE. That's our little acronym that we use for the kits, and we've also got a kit, like a pouch that they fit into that you can have everything at your disposal.
Disposal.
Yeah. Anyway, SPIE, Special Purpose Insertion Extraction, is kind of what that's called. But those are just some general things that I would lump under the whole tradecraft tools.
Yeah.
You don't really need to carry some pen that doubles as a syringe to put poison in your adversary's drink or anything like that. This is more real world things that I think about with tradecraft. What?
I'm just thinking like real world stuff, like a free Whopper Jr. coupon that you keep in your wallet.
You never know. All right. Next question comes from Joel R. on Facebook, and this was in response to an article that Chad McBroom wrote for our site. It's called
Chad Neighbors.
Oh, sorry.
It's all good.
My bad.
We
Chad
have
Neighbors. We have a couple of Chads.
Some Chads.
In response to the prioritizing skill development article. So he talked about the need to, and coincidentally we were talking about when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. We fall into that with a lot of the people that are kind of in this tactical industry, is that a lot of people spend a lot of time and resources on training with firearms, and that there's nothing wrong with that. Being proficient in a firearm is very important. However, it almost comes at the expense of neglecting other skills that are very much important too on a daily basis that you might need to use with the situations you encounter. So going back to the whole mindset thing, you talked about de-escalation.
Yeah.
So do you want to hit on that
Yeah,
one?
so I was at the DMV, which is, just a breeding ground for anger. And it was early in the morning because I like to get there before it opens, and there's usually a line. And guy went to the front of the door like he was going to jump the line. And so a lot of people don't like that. They're pretty vocal about it. And they started getting into kind of yelling, and it escalated, and it got to the point to where they were threatening fighting and things like that. And it made me realize that
I'm gonna fight you.
Exactly. In situations like that, if you do carry concealed, if you don't have the proper training for things like de-escalation or removing yourself from the situation or things like that, your first jump may be to a firearm, which in this situation, people are just hot-headed. It's hot outside. It's early in the morning. People are sleepy. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're being serious, but if all you ever train on is firearms training, that's going to be kind of where your brain kicks into gear rather than what happened, which was a police officer that worked inside came outside and de-escalated the situation, which he has, I'm sure, immense training on, because that's one of the big things they harp on, is how can you take the situation and pull it down, see it from both people's perspectives, and like, yes, people are angry, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to turn to a fatal or potentially fatal situation. So it was just something that I was thinking about after seeing that comment of, maybe you should look at some de-escalation training, or, we talked about basic medical training, the things that people overlook that are going to be the most likely scenarios you're going to encounter.
Yeah, I mean, there's that old adage, you should also, not only should you know how to take a life, which, I mean, that's a broad stroke way of saying, having proficiency in firearms for self-defense, but you should also know how to save a life. That's a skill that may come in to play way more in a likely scenario than something involving a firearm too. So that's why we advocate medical stuff a lot on ITS too. And we've been asked before, your musters and these skill set development things that you guys run, how come you guys don't do firearms? I'm like, there are so many great places and great instructors out there to get firearms training at. We've always focused on the other skills that are kind of underappreciated, and that's always been our philosophy at ITS too. So it was great when Chad wrote that article, because it it definitely reinforces that too. And getting people to think about that just from a different perspective is always important. So we try to offer as many perspectives on topics as we can in the ITS articles that we publish. So it was great to kind of see that. But we. It kind of came up in the comments that, you guys should do a podcast on it because we want some specifics. So, I would say in terms of specifics, when you're talking about these kind of underappreciated skills, I would really start to get into trauma training. And, just some things that pop into my head offhand, you look for somebody that's, proficient in some type of TCCC training or CETCC kind of training. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, there's so many acronyms. Alphabet.
The police side has their own acronym, which I think is CETCCC.
I think that's the one. Yeah.
But then the TCCC is more on the military side of things too. But really, all that is a set of guidelines for what to do when you're treating somebody under fire. So it's basically care under fire principles, and it goes into how to stabilize someone, get them off the X, be able to treat them, and save their life. So, it goes into best practices for tourniquets and what tourniquets are recommended and what aren't. So there's really a wealth of information in those articles, too, that you can learn from. And just even walking through that and reading it, the guidelines, which we publish every time there's an update, we try to publish that on ITS because we think they're that important, that even the updates and the changes that get made are important to look at too. So from a non-training perspective, meaning stuff that doesn't cost you money, just going and reading those, which you can do on our site for free, and we'll link to that as well in the episode intel, is a very good starting point. And then also trying to find, a CPR class or a first aid class or, a Red Cross class that can give you a fundamental understanding of just basic first aid principles like the ABCs, treating airway, breathing, and circulation. Those are great avenues to explore too. And most big cities, if you live in a big city, they'll have CERT training, which is training. Community Emergency Response Team. Yes. Yeah, I think that's the acronym. But that will give you a pretty big breadth of training. While there's nothing that gets gone over in like minute detail like you would get in a real class, this is all free. Like you can sign up for CERT training for absolutely nothing. You'll learn the basics of triage and how to crib something to leverage a structure that fell on somebody off of them so you can rescue them. But the triage stuff is really important and really interesting. So that's what I took the most out of the CERT training that I did in Fort Worth. But I also, and they'll give you free tools too, which is crazy. They'll give you like a hard hat and free things to use if you have to deploy, so to speak, to help out in a disaster. And there's never been a disaster big enough since I've taken CERT training to do a recall, for that. But that's something that I've wanted to do for a while too, is kind of go through the gear that was given to me for the CERT class and kind of look at that and say, oh, well, there's some better things that you can use because it's all free. It gets donated to them. So, obviously it's kind of, just like the government gives you, whatever's the cheapest.
The best.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's kind of going off on a tangent, but there's great places like that to get free training.
Well, and it helps you to know how your community is responding.
Yeah.
So you can start to recognize warning signs and things, like knowing what each of the warning sirens. We have warning sirens that go off here once a month or around there of, oh, I know what that is because you took the class and you understand what will be happening during those kind of disasters.
Yeah, and just to go along with that, and I know we're kind of running over on time. We try to keep this short, but I will say that over anything that you could do cost-wise, getting involved with your local community and training and understanding how your local law enforcement works is probably the best thing that I could suggest to anybody, because you'll probably be able to do that for no money. It won't cost you a lot. All you're out is your time. Even like the, what do you call it? The
Citizens Police Academy.
Yeah, the
That's
CPA.
a great course.
Yeah, so taking a CPA class, understanding what your community does during a response is really important. And then also just learning where to find out information. Like, hey, do they have a good website? What's the contact number? What's the non-emergency number for the police department? There's just all kinds of things that you need to know on a local basis first before, even expanding your knowledge base into other things too. And I'm not saying,
Absolutely.
To take that for granted. I'm not saying not to get that training. You could do that at the same time. But, there's a lot of resources locally that are at your disposal for probably next to nothing.
Yeah.
So I know that's a little bit of a tangent. We kind of jumped off a little bit, but hopefully that helps, Joel, and thanks for your question. All right, thanks for listening, and if you have any questions, or watching if you're on YouTube, have any questions, use the # Gear Tasting on any social media network, and we'll find them and get them answered for you here on the show, or our Questions Over Coffee segment that appears on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts if you're not subscribed. We now are on Spotify too, so you can find us on Spotify. When we're looking into other networks too, we're looking into what, Google Play, and
Google Play,
also SoundCloud.
SoundCloud, yeah.
So
if you have suggestions, let us know.
Yeah, if there's stuff that you guys want to see us on platform-wise, please let us know. You could use the Gear Tasting # to tell us that too, so just let us know. And while you're there subscribing, we very much appreciate your review and rating if you're on iTunes or the Apple Podcast, whatever they call it now. But you guys have left some amazing reviews. We thank you for that. So if you would be willing to give us a 5-star review, it will very much help us get our podcast shown to more potential listeners. So very much would appreciate that. Last but not least, we've got some details on our crew leader membership linked in the episode intel, along with everything we've kind of talked about today. We always try to throw in relevant articles that we've written on itstactical.com into the episode intel, but we will have some info on the membership there as well. It allows you to join in and support the show, but allows us to give you back something in return too. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.